With the passing of Iran's highest leader, it seems that his successors are making a sudden 180-degree turn. On one hand, they say revenge is near, but on the other hand, they are also open to talking again, and Trump immediately agreed, so it looks like they will return to the negotiating table. In a way, this is similar to what happened in Venezuela, but the scope is bigger and the impact is heavier. This time, the United States, together with Israel, has directly hit the regime's leader. And now there is a possibility that the new leaders will be more open to Washington's demands. In this video, we will discuss what really happened so far, who is leading the regime, what their strategy was, and what could possibly happen in the coming days. And stay tuned because there may be unexpected events. And will we still see scenes like this? Let's find out. But before we start, if you are new to our channel, please don't forget to subscribe so you will always be updated with videos like this. Today, the bombing in Iran continues. In the past few hours, the well-known B-2 bombers have also joined the operation. Both Israel and the United States are threatening to intensify their attacks in the coming days. And this is despite the fact that the initial wave of the offensive was already very intense. It was extremely intense because the main target was the supreme leader himself, Ayatollah Khamenei, the highest political, ideological, and religious authority in the Shia world. He was not the only one killed. A large part of the leadership was also hit. Right now, it's not just Khamenei who was killed. Almost the entire top military leadership of Iran was also wiped out. This includes the Minister of Defense, the Chief of the General Staff, the Commander-in-Chief of the Revolutionary Guard, the Head of Intelligence, the Head of the Conventional Armed Forces, and many others. To be clear, the blow that the regime received in just a few hours is truly devastating. And in fact, it's almost as if its head was cut off. Their leadership was literally decapitated. Because of this, the formation of an interim leadership council was announced. They will temporarily lead the country until the next supreme leader is chosen. The successor needs to be appointed by the Assembly of Experts, a council composed of 88 clerics. Currently, the interim leadership council is composed of President Masoud Pezeshkian, the head of the judiciary Qassem Hossein Mohseni Ege, and Ayatollah Alireza Arafi from the Guardian Council. The last two represent the religious authority, so they are expected to have the greatest influence within this council. In other words, this is a temporary government, an interim leadership, while it is being decided who will ultimately hold the highest power in Iran. And now the question is, how did they respond to the huge blow they received? Honestly, their response was actually much weaker than many expected. And this is despite the fact that while they were privately considering the possibility of returning to negotiations, in public, they were promising the mother of all retaliations. According to their own statement, our beloved leader Khamenei became a martyr at the hands of the corrupt alliance of the United States and the Zionists. We will push our enemies to desperation by destroying their bases and all their military capabilities. Meanwhile, the Revolutionary Guard announced the launch of what is said to be the most devastating offensive in the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Headlines also came out saying Iran vows devastating revenge after confirming Supreme Leader's death, which means Iran has sworn severe retaliation after confirming the loss of their Supreme Leader. The military also threatened what they call a regret-inducing revenge, a retaliation that would devastate their enemies, just moments after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed inside his own compound. While bombs continued to fall on Iran, the regime vowed to attack the United States military bases, which they consider terrorists. According to their statements, the enemy burned the heart of the Iranian people, and in response, we will burn their hearts. After this, Grand Ayatollah Hossein Nouri Hamidani, one of the most important and ultra-conservative religious authorities in Iran, and almost 101 years old, issued a fatwa. In that fatwa, he said it is the duty of every Muslim to avenge the blood of their martyred leader, referring to Khamenei. In short, that's what they're saying, that's what they're promising to do. But the question is, are they really doing it? If you notice, Iran continues to launch missiles and drones against some neighboring countries and against Israel. There are even reports that they launched 4 missiles toward the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. But if you look closely, the intensity of these attacks is low. They are sporadic, not coordinated, and seem to be not fully organized. Is this a lack of capability or a lack of leadership? Is it possible that the regime has been hit hard enough that it can no longer function properly? That the heavy blow has left them almost not fully operational? And let's not forget that what they're facing now is a very powerful war machine, experienced in warfare with a well-organized system, and truly advanced when it comes to technology. A machine that doesn't give even a moment's rest. In addition, it seems that Iran doesn't want to cross certain dangerous red lines. For example, they don't carry out suicide-style or kamikaze attacks against the energy infrastructure of their neighboring countries, even after their Ayatollah has been killed. So for now, perhaps the more concerning aspect of Iran's possible response is not a direct missile strike, but what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. There, they announced that they are prohibiting ships from passing through. There are even speculations that the first ship may have already been attacked, but that's not the biggest problem. Because of the situation, insurance companies and shipping companies are starting to pull out. If the insurance pulls out, the ships will stop operating. And if the ships stop, global trade will be affected. For example, the Danish shipping giant Maersk, one of the largest shipping companies in the world, announced that they will temporarily halt all their ships from passing through the Strait of Hormuz until further notice. According to them, this is due to serious concerns for the safety of their crew, ships, and their clients' cargo. And in fact, this is probably the biggest concern right now. This is not just a military issue, it's an economic issue for the whole world. Meanwhile, Donald Trump continues to call on Iranian citizens, inviting them to take advantage of this moment to rise up against the regime. He promises that he will support them, and while doing so, he also declares that the attacks on government facilities and enclaves will continue. In one of his statements, he said that Khamenei, one of the worst people in history, is gone. This is the biggest opportunity for Iranian citizens to take back their country. However, his warning is also clear. Heavy and precise bombings will continue throughout the week or as long as necessary. This means that while there are talks about negotiations, on the ground and in the air, the operation will still continue. There's almost no doubt here, it appears that both Israel and the United States have agreed to take advantage of this opportunity to continue destroying Iran's military capability. Their target is to crush the missile program, weaken the nuclear program, and destroy as much as possible the other military facilities of the country. And when it comes to Iran's threats, their message is also clear. They declared that they will launch the strongest attack today, even more intense than anything they have done before. But the other side immediately warned them not to do it, because if they go through with it, they will be met with a force the world has never seen before. In other words, it looks like several more days of intense bombing could happen. And even if the authorities in Iran agree to return to negotiations and accept the conditions demanded by Washington, there is a strong possibility that the United States and Israel will still continue to crush the remaining capabilities of Iran. They will use the situation to make sure the enemy is already weakened. And if Tehran does not comply with what is being asked of them, it is likely that the attacks will continue for a longer period. Aside from this, there is also a strong chance that Washington and Jerusalem will do everything to spark a popular uprising inside Iran itself. Because aside from bombs, internal pressure within the country is also a very powerful weapon. And there is one more important thing you should remember. What we are seeing now is a clear example of modern warfare, a war driven by high-end military technology. The advanced AI system is used to select targets. This is not just traditional intelligence gathering, it's real-time data processing and algorithmic targeting. There are even reports that Israel managed to hack a popular Iranian prayer app to release a message encouraging people to turn away from the regime and support the resistance. One thing is clear, and that's the fact that Iran seems to have greatly overestimated their own capabilities. Just think about it, in just a few hours, the supreme leader and a large part of the country's top leadership were eliminated. On a strategic and operational level, that's really powerful. And this is another victory for US and Israeli intelligence. And beyond the capabilities of their intelligence services, there's also the brutal effectiveness of the Israeli Air Force, which many consider to be one of the best in the world today. But despite all of this, it's clear that the Ayatollah miscalculated. They didn't read the situation correctly, and they weren't prepared for the response. As a result, their refusal to accept additional concessions in the negotiations that took place recently may go down in history as one of the biggest miscalculations we've seen. According to reports, Iran's proposal was to lower uranium enrichment from 60% down to 1.5% for civilian use and to temporarily halt the program. However, it's clear that this doesn't mean a permanent end, but only a temporary halt. And from the beginning, they didn't want to give up their stockpile of enriched uranium. They see this as a bargaining chip, an ace in negotiations. Although later on they said they could let it go, by that point it seemed like it was already too late. And the problem is, no one trusts them anymore. On top of that, they don't want to touch what is probably the most sensitive issue in the negotiation. And it's not the nuclear program because, in fact, the Ayatollahs are willing to give that up if necessary. What they really don't want to talk about is the missile program. This is their strongest deterrent. This is their only real way to show strength and project power abroad. I won't give an exact estimate of how far they are, but it's clear that they've long dreamed of developing an intercontinental ballistic missile. And this is not a new ambition. So Iran's strong refusal to include ballistic missiles in the discussion is a huge problem. For Tehran, this issue is like a wall, a line they cannot cross. Because if you look at it, if they don't have effective air defense, if they don't have modern fighter jets, and if their missiles are also taken away, they will be almost defenseless in front of their enemies. That's why for them, missiles are non-negotiable. And if you notice, the only way they can currently respond is through drones and missiles. Those are their primary weapons. But that's not the only thing we should pay attention to. Iran's response was more limited than expected. And remember this, their supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is not just a political figure, but also the highest religious authority in Shia Islam. In addition, it is estimated that around 50 more important personalities within the regime were killed, from the Revolutionary Guard to high-ranking political figures, and even some outside the inner circle of power itself. In fact, it wouldn't be unreasonable for the world to expect real chaos to erupt throughout the entire region. But what are we really seeing now? A few drones here that cause only minor damage, a few missiles there that are almost all intercepted with relative ease, and that's where the inevitable question comes in. What is the explanation for all of this? Is it really that Iran is incapable of causing greater damage, or are they just carefully calculating every move? What is their real objective? The price of chaos. Let's listen to what the US president himself said. This is what we expected. We thought it would double. And for now, it's lower than what we thought. For the President of America, Iran's reaction after their regime was decapitated was milder than expected. And this is despite the continuous attacks against almost every country in the Gulf. Although there is a particular target that seems to be getting more of their attention, the United Arab Emirates. There were suicide drones that hit airports in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. There are reports of damage to several hotels, apartment towers, and residential areas. And to give you an idea of the scale of the situation, according to the United Arab Emirates Ministry of Defense, at the time of making this report, they have already faced 165 ballistic missiles and 541 Iranian drones. But most of these were intercepted or were allowed to fall because there was no threat. For example, there are missiles that are headed straight to the desert. And this is where another big question comes in, which I'm sure is on your mind. Why is Iran attacking its neighbors when they have no direct involvement in the military actions of Washington and Jerusalem? What is the purpose of these attacks? Is this a warning, intimidation, or the start of a bigger conflict? And could these escalate further? To answer that, we first need to understand why the Ayatollah's regime is reacting this way. First of all, we should remember that what Iran is doing now is nothing new. They have long warned that this would happen if they were attacked. They have made it clear from the beginning that any intervention by America would be a recipe for an all-out war in the region. Iran has long used the threat of a regional war as a strategic wildcard. A threat of a large-scale war is used as a deterrent to prevent anyone from launching a serious attack against them. An attack like what happened now. But now that this has happened, the interpretation of their reaction is different. This is no longer simple deterrence, this is now punishment. The aim now is to punish the allies of the United States in the region, especially the countries included in the Abraham Accords, the agreement that normalized the relations of some Arab states with Israel. And do you know which countries signed this? That's right, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Exactly, these are also the two countries most affected by the attacks. Although the strikes are limited, it doesn't mean they have no effect. In fact, there is one thing that Dubai and the UAE as a whole have long been proud of, and that is their reputation as a safe destination. Dubai is seen as a safe haven in the Middle East. That's part of their recipe for success because when a place is safe, investors come in, tourists increase, and money circulates. But think about this. What will happen if the world keeps seeing Iranian drones and missiles falling from their skies? Naturally, the image will change. A lot of people will start to ask, is it really as safe as they say? And that alone is already a kind of punishment, a pressure tactic. Through this, it seems like a way to pressure these countries to intervene, to talk to Washington and urge them to stop the offensive. That's why the attacks are limited. Just enough to create fear and doubt, but not enough to spark a total war. Right now, many of you are probably wondering, why aren't the Emirates, Bahrain, and other affected countries retaliating? Why are they only intercepting? Why isn't there a direct counterstrike? The answer to that has a name, and that is strategic containment. As I mentioned, the attacks are moderate and the damage is limited. Meanwhile, Iran continues to be targeted as desired by the United States and Israel. But think about this. If the Emirates, Bahrain, or other Gulf countries retaliate directly, the situation will only get worse and everything might spiral out of control. This is one of those situations where the risk-benefit ratio of retaliation is simply not worth it. Why? Because it's no secret that most of the Gulf countries' economies rely on oil and natural gas. Almost everything here revolves around this, from national income to international trade. Now, what will happen if the United Arab Emirates or Bahrain decides to retaliate directly against Iran? The answer lies in geography. Almost all of the oil and gas fields in the region are within reach of Iran's missiles, even if they are only short-range missiles. And it's not just about the oil fields themselves. This includes the oil export terminals, the gas liquefaction plants, and the facilities needed to process and load the oil and gas onto tankers to be shipped around the world. If these are hit, it's not just one country that will be affected, the global market will be impacted. If any of these countries retaliate, the situation could shift from a few drones causing minimal damage to direct attacks on the very heart of the region's energy infrastructure. And if that happens, it will be bad for everyone. Because Iran might start targeting oil and gas fields. And as you can imagine, that's exactly the scenario everyone has been trying to avoid. A scenario we might call mutually assured oil destruction. And I say mutually assured because it's not just the Gulf countries that have something to lose. Iran also stands to lose a lot. In fact, the Islamic Republic has a very critical point. It's a place they know would be the first target if an all-out war breaks out. I'm talking about Karg Island. At first glance, it looks like just an ordinary small island, a piece of land that's less than 20 kilometers long. It's even smaller than New York's Central Park if you combine them. It's a small territory, but this is where Iran's greatest weakness is hidden. This is where the oil terminal is located, where about 70% of all Iranian crude exports pass through. In other words, this is the lung that provides oxygen to the regime. And what's more dangerous is that it's within Israel's strike range. It's within reach of the Gulf countries and now also the United States, from their aircraft carrier and military base in the region. If Iran dares to start an all-out war, for example, and attacks the oil fields of their neighbors, there's a big possibility that this island will be the first target of retaliation, a direct hit to their main source of income. In other words, this scenario is very dangerous for everyone. That's why Iran isn't playing the total chaos card. They don't go all out against their neighbors. Their actions are limited, controlled, and careful. In this context, one thing is clear. Everyone has a lot to lose and no one wants to risk their own interests. In any case, as I said, the punishment from the United States and Israel continues. Iran can't stop this anymore, and the new leaders probably don't want to share their predecessors' fate. That's why they're asking to return to the negotiating table. They're asking to continue the dialogue. Now, according to Oman, Iran is seeking peace and is calling for caution as tensions rise. And as we've seen, this has also been confirmed by the President of the United States. The question is, how will this end? Many are now talking about a new strategy. Remove the strong leader with a powerful blow and wait for the next generation to be more obedient. For us, this is the new strategy of the United States. But whatever happens, this won't end. So they're removing all threats. There are two things that are clear to Iran right now. First, the military capacity of the United States is increasing with new technology. In the modern world, it's more important to have a real deterrence capability than to have a lot of weapons and a large army. Second, conventional warfare may no longer be practical for most countries in the world. And did you know, it's possible that many of the leaders of Iran are already thinking about retaliation, but a different kind of revenge. Jihad. This is the plan favored by some in Iran just a few weeks ago. According to the Parliament of Iran, they are ready to fight a holy war if the United States targets the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Although Iranian society is somewhat secular, remember two things. First, while not the majority, a sizable portion of the population are strong religious fundamentalists. With over 90 million people, that's already millions. Second, hybrid warfare has been the specialty of the Revolutionary Guard for many years, especially the Quds Force. And this kind of tactic doesn't change quickly. Many precedents have shown that Iran is skilled in state terrorism. For example, in 1979, an Iranian agent killed the nephew of the Shah of Persia in the middle of Paris. In the 1990s, there were attacks on the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires and the AMIA Jewish Center that left more than 100 people dead. We haven't even mentioned their connection to Hezbollah and other militias in the region. They specialize in these operations, and the consequences are painful. This is no joke. Whatever happens this week, the story will probably not end here. Iran is a giant where politics and religion are intertwined, and this always causes complications. But the question is, in the end, will there be an agreement? Will Iran give in anytime soon? Share your answer in the comments. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel by clicking the button to stay updated on all events. And see you in our next video. See you there.